bring these people in.
Go for it. And we'll just get this all ready. Right. Hello, lots of new people. I just stand here like waving. As people enter. It's like coming into the pub, opening the door. Hello. Come in, have a seat. Grab a coffee from the table. Have some biscuits. Have a quick wee before we start. Right, if you let me know, Helen, when you've let in those who are waiting, then we will try and kick off ASAP. Because we've got lots to squash in a small amount of time.
So I've let in everyone at the moment, but I think as they're in the waiting room, so I just have to let them in again.
Okay. That's fine. Well, perhaps we'll just start then, and if people miss the first couple of minutes, it's not the end of the world, it's just intro stuff. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. It's actually set as a meeting rather than a webinar due to reasons and science and things, so sorry about that. But this is the webinar Adapting Your Crop Plan for Changing Markets. As everyone's aware, many of us have had some handbrake turns to our customer base and markets over the last couple of weeks. So if I just spell out how we've got an hour and a half for this webinar, so it's going to be a bit roller coaster race car speed. But we've got 4 really good speakers who are going to tell us how they grow year round for their box schemes. We're going to go around and do a really quick intro, a couple of minutes each with the 4 speakers. And then we're going to look at late crops, and each of the speakers will speak on that subject. Winter crops, same again. Storage, the speakers will speak each about storage. Hungry gap, and then jobs to be getting on with now. And then we'll have hopefully about 15 minutes, as long as we've all kept to time at the end, for questions, which Helen will be dealing with through the chat. If you've got any questions, just feel free to write them in the chat as we go along. If you've got any points for clarification as well, like you don't understand what someone's just said, like, what's that? What did they just say? The internet cut out and I couldn't hear that word, whatever it is. Please say, we're just recording this as well, just for your information. If I just pass over to Helen, who is currently letting people in, she's the gatekeeper. Do you want to just say about any housekeeping and the chat, Helen?
Hi, yeah, I'm Helen. I'm from the Land Workers. Actually, you've kind of mentioned most things. If people keep to the chat as a way of asking questions, and then we'll have questions at the end. But if you want to put points of clarification in there, then we can also raise them during the meeting. As there's loads of people and we're on a kind of meeting rather than a webinar, if you change to speaker view, which is in the top right, that means that you'll only see the people that are actually speaking rather than everyone that's on the call. And a request is, please keep yourself muted at all times, just to avoid any feedback and things like that might be coming in. And if you find that you have been muted, it might be because I'm behind the scenes muting you. Thanks, that's everything.
Cool, thank you. Yes, sorry, I should have introduced myself, shouldn't I? I'm Kate Collins. I'm not Liv, who you've been contacting. She's unable to make it tonight, so I'm just stepping in to help chair this session. Right, if we go around and just introduce to our lovely speakers then, if I go to, we'll go around and do it in turn. If we go to Becca Stevenson first, do you want to give us a really quick intro to yourself, Becca, and any tips that you wish you'd had when you started growing all year round?
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Becca. I'm the grower at 5 Acre Community Farm, which is near Coventry. It's about 6 acres. We are a CSA and we have about 90 members. We grow all year round and we don't bring anything in. We're certified organic. Few important things when it comes to growing year round. About October time, I do a little spreadsheet and I kind of count up how much veg I've got in October and then spread it out for the rest of the winter. into sort of April and May, so I can kind of make sure I've got stuff for Hungry Gap. And then lots of variety is really good. So I do pots of plants, dried beans, dried chilies, you know, try some quinoa, do whatever, lots of different things. And the main thing I would say is not to stress out too much about trying to fill the Hungry Gap, because it will be what it will be. And the weather does what it does. And, you know, you can't plant your things in April that's going to feed you in May. So, it is what it is. You just got to prepare yourself.
Cool. I like that. Good motivation early on. Like, don't worry, it'll be fine. Cool. Thank you, Becca. If we go to Harry now, do you want to introduce yourself, Harry, and just any tips that you'd like to pass on up front?
Hello, yeah, I'm Harry. Currently one of the growers at Shillingford Organics in Devon. We grow on about 27 acres, supplying a box scheme year round with veg. I used to work at Barkham Nurseries, which is down in East Sussex, which is another box scheme, doing about, I think they're doing about 5, I think their box numbers are shot up at the moment. And that grew year round as well. So tips, I guess, I think something I learnt the hard way was the importance of getting sowing dates right, especially as you're going into the sort of end of summer, early autumn, when you need to get stuff sown to plant out in your poly tunnels. It's just really important to get those sowing dates done in time, because everything's starting to slow down. And if you plant stuff out too late, you end up going into those winter months, you know, sort of October, November, December, with not very much to pick. So, and to go with that, I always found something, as well as a detailed sowing spreadsheet, have a physical copy of it, have a year planner on a wall that you see every day, every week, with all the important sowing dates on it. Every week when you can look up and see, okay, we need to start sowing the winter salads, we need to get the overwinter brassicas sown now. Or so I think just having that up on a wall so everyone can see it is just sort of really important, so you don't miss any of those things, so that when you go into the winter you've got decent plants and stuff to pick from, so you haven't got months of waiting for that regrowth in the new year. I think that's something I learned the hard way, so I hope, yeah, that sort of helps.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely, wall planners for the win. I get one every year from BHGS about November, December time, because I'm a regular customer with there, and they're so useful. Brilliant. Thank you, Harry. Ruth, can we come to you? Just give us a brief intro and whether your box numbers have shot up and any tips.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ruth Hancock. I'm a vegetable grower in East Devon, on about 7 acres. I do about 80 boxes a week, or towards that, it depends on the time of the year. I do 45 weeks of the year, because during the Hungry Gap I go fortnightly with deliveries, which means, because I only supply what I produce myself, apart from storage potatoes in the winter, which I buy in. So I find that going fortnightly in the Hungry Gap means that I can keep the boxes that I am supplying well filled, but it also means that I don't have those 2 days that I'd normally be picking and packing are free for doing growing work, and my customers seem quite happy with that. But it means I don't have a big gap where I then have to remind people that they belong to a veg box scheme. It just keeps it going. So I would say that's worked really well for me. I've been doing this for 17 years. So I started the box scheme from scratch in 2003 on rented land, and then got to buy some land and re-established it here. So yeah, I think a little bit like Becca, when I first started growing, I used to stress every week, am I going to be able to make a veg bag, and and that sort of thing. But now I don't really. I just keep sowing almost continuously, but also if I think so, I rather than a CSA, I charge an amount for each veg box. That's like a standard quantity. But if I feel that I'm not quite filling it up, then I'll just knock the price down, and nobody dies. Like, and most people just carry on paying you know, they think, oh yeah, no, it's definitely worth that. So it's easy to say now, 17 years later, don't stress about it, because obviously you will at the beginning, but expect if you carry on just to, you know, nobody can maintain that level of stress for that long.
Yeah.
And customers are understanding, you know, if you just tell them what's going on, they almost quite like that whole kind of, you know, involvement in it. So again, don't stress too much, just keep sewing stuff.
Thanks, Ruth. Cool. And Tom, can we come to you as well with the same?
Yeah, so I'm based on the Gower Peninsula, I'm one of 2 growers growing with Khitan CSA, and we are currently growing for 125 households, and we've got another 100 households on a waiting list, which has again gone up recently with all this stuff going on. We're lucky we've got a couple of, I've noticed Abby's here, who's basically setting up another CSA just down the road from us. And yeah, you know, we're looking to try and support trainees to set up more CSAs around us. And so far it's working pretty well. So what we do, yeah, we're growing on 8 acres, I should have said. And we're pretty much supplying all year round as far as we can. And the few things, if I was to say a couple of things, I would say grow a lot, grow more than you think you're going to need, and just a lot of variety. To some extent, you can sort of be precise with what you're going to grow and quantities, but ultimately there's going to be things that aren't going to work and things that are going to work. It's going to change so much every year. So just grow a lot and grow a lot of variety. And also, I was also going to say the whole panic and stress thing, because I think when you're starting out, you know, it is a lot of stress to try and supply all year round. But, you know, things go wrong, but ultimately you will always have some veg, and you might not have all the things you think, but I'd say ask for help, make logical decisions when things do go wrong, and find, like, I always had like 3 growers on my phone. And if I had any questions, I would sort of take it in turns to ring all 3 of them, so I didn't have to bother one of them too much. And that was like a real lifesaver for me. So that's it.
That's a great tip. So just have 3 kind of quasi mentors that you can circulate. Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. Right, if we go straight into the first subject area then, which is looking at late crops. So that'd be late autumn crops. So we're going to sort of just ask all the panelists just to think about good crops that will add interest for your retail customers. What kind of varieties? When do you sow and plant them? Because that's something we need to do now. Do you extend any late summer crops with tunnels or anything else? So if we just stick to the same order again and go to Becca if we can.
Going first every time, you know, it would be like something I should have said on the last one. Anyway, right, so last year I did some celery in a tunnel, and that was great because it extended its season. Stuff outside of got by the frost, but the stuff inside was enormous and amazing. That was sown on the 7th of June, no, planted on the 7th of June and sown on the 14th of March. Then I did some mooli. I always quite like doing some mooli because that's quite interesting. We've got nice sandy soil with different people. That's sown direct on the 16th of May-ish. And then I like doing Victorian Chinese cabbage. It's my favourite thing. So sown on about the 26th of July, and then harvested around November-ish. It kind of depends if you're going to get early frosts or not. But yeah, that adds interest. It's not what you normally get. And then we keep the tomatoes going until about November in the tunnels and don't rip them out, because they just keep something else of interest ticking along. Yeah. And this year I'm going to try fennel in the tunnel. Because I like this finding room in tunnels.
Can I ask you, but do you change your watering system as the season goes on with tomatoes?
I guess I water them a bit less. Because I don't feel I need it as much when it cools down a bit. Yeah, I'm not too prescriptive on anything.
Yeah, cool. Help keep blight away a bit as
well. Instinctive, you
know? Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Becca. Harry, on this rip-roaring race, let's go to you now and look at late autumn crops, if that's okay.
One, I think sort of it's not necessarily specific to this period, but throughout the sort of winter months, I think, you know, mixed salad leaves all the sort of salad brassicas and all of those things that do so well in the tunnels at this time of year, and chicories outside. I just think that it's sort of unique to what we do on organic farms and market gardens, and it's, you know, it's a high value crop, and it makes sense on all scales. Small scale, it makes a lot of sense to grow that, and it can go all the way from, you know, mid-October, late October through November, December, all the way even through the Hungry Gap. So it's sort of just really good, and it adds a lot of interest to, you know, because it's something unique. It's something that people can't get elsewhere, really, that quality and flavour and freshness. So I think that's just a really good one. It's a little bit late for this one now, so it's not good for this year, but I think celeriac, I think, is quite a good crop for that period from sort of September to, you know, through December, January. It's sort of becoming more and more popular, and I think it's sort of quite an interesting crop. But yeah, people are more sort of getting to know it, and sort of the demand is growing, I think, for that crop. And you can store it in the field if you put mesh over it, I think, and ridge it up. What else? I thought Kalettes is quite a good one. They're sort of, you know, you can get 3 different varieties, I think, but if you get the garden mix variety seed packet, then I think it's all 3 varieties, and they crop from like October through to February, I think. But again, they're sort of something a little bit different. I know they're an F1, but they are quite popular and they're quite high value, and you get multiple picks from a plant. And I just think they look really lovely and people really like them. So yeah, I think that's quite a good one. I think that's about it, really, for now.
Yeah. They were called flower sprouts, weren't they, for a year or 2? They were sold as flower sprouts, Kalettes, and then they were rebranded to try and distance themselves from the sprout name, I think. And they sold really well in M&S apparently after that. So
right, yeah.
And then when do you normally sow the Kalettes? Is that about now, or?
Yeah, we have already sown us, but I think you could get away with sowing them now and planting them out in June. Yeah, so you've got time to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Harry. Ruth, can we come to you for your late autumn lovelies?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, quite a lot of things that Harry and Becca have already said I do as well. Definitely celeriac. I've noticed in the chat box someone was asking about when do you sow celeriac. It's February. I buy them in from Delftland because it's one thing that I find, because they have to go in so early or to be grown on heat so early. So I should be getting some to plant out next week, basically. So it's too late really to do celeriac now, unless you can get some already grown plug plants, I think. In the autumn, I also do golden turnips. Basically anything that's kind of, it can be a standard crop, but if it's slightly different color, you know, because people don't always realize that, you know, a golden turnip and a purple turnip is kind of the same thing, but it just looks different. And yellow beetroot. And I also grow black Spanish radish with the very black skin. So that's something, again, a bit interesting. And fennel as well. So I find where I am in Devon that I can cover fairly late sown fennel, sort of around about August time. I'll cover that, and it will even keep going up until sort of late November under cozy text, that sort of thing. Again, Kalettes, I've just planted out my Kalettes, but totally I think you could sow them now and you'd still get a crop that would just come later. And all different varieties of kale. Again, from the customer's point of view, if you've got 6 different types of kale, rather than giving curly kale every week, you know, they get a different type of kale each week, and they sort of think that they've got, you know, they've had a different vegetable. So yeah, you don't worry so much about, oh, this is kale and then kale and then kale. They've seen something, you know, different in each bag. It's not like you're trying to, you know, dupe them. It's just, it's different and interesting for them, I think. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, there's, you know, there's lots of winter salads. There's all the oriental salads that we can grow either as cut and come again leaves, which is what I do a lot of. Yeah, I mean, there's loads, there's, you know, too many to mention really, all the winter salads, some of which you can then cut as a individual vegetable occasionally or put them in a salad bag. When do I sow the black Spanish radish? Not till August, because otherwise it will bolt. So it grows pretty quick, so do it in my soil anyway. I've got very warm land, sandy loam, but maybe further north you'd have to do it earlier. I do know what I'm doing really.
And in the salads, I guess, the brassica salads anyway, around about the same time?
Yeah, I will usually module sow them because I've got tomatoes in the tunnels. I've got 3 big polytunnels, 20 meters by 9 meters, and one of them is dedicated to tomatoes, one is dedicated to aubergines, peppers, and other of the solanums. And so I'll have modules waiting to go in amongst those crops. Sort of one thing on top of another, just to keep using that space, optimizing that space.
Cool. And then maybe I'll just, because we've got an extra spare minute, I'll just ask you and maybe just everyone quickly, for winter salad or autumn salads, do you want to just say your 5 varieties that you use? So whether it's red frills, Mizuna, but maybe non-brassicas as well. So Ruth, I don't know if you want to start.
Yeah, I grow chrysanthemum greens. I find those are very good. Just something a bit different to put in the salad bags and a bit of bulk. And I've got now basically self-sown, what's it called, Claytonia. It just comes up every autumn because the seeds are there, and that bulks up salad bags as well. So yeah, I use that too.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's known as summer purslane, and it's amazing.
Winter purslane, not summer purslane. Summer purslane is the one that tastes of soap. Yeah. Winter purslane tastes a bit like soap, but not so much.
So, cool, thank you. Becca, any other varieties to add to that mix?
I was just going to say, I think you missed out Tom.
Go to Tom. Haven't done Tom yet, have we? No. Sorry, Tom.
All right. For the whole thing, I was just going to say, we through the years, that's like our 6th year now, we've kind of grown lots of various little bits and pieces to kind of supplement and sort of give a bit of variety. And we found a lot of those actually people didn't really want them, like the mooli, the black Spanish radish. There's quite a few things that we've tried and people are like, just give us the... So I would say my 3 main autumn things that I see as like favourite, like classic autumn crops would be squash, kale and leeks, which are sort of like, they're not staple crops for us because we wouldn't be giving those every week. They'd be every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, maybe every month even for the squash, depending on how much we've got. And I would say the squash, we sow them about the first, second week of May, and we do blue curry, black futsu, green curry, orange Hokkaido, butternut, crown prince, and marina de Chioggia. The kale, we do the 3rd week of April. And again, we do like a variety of kale because it's just a really lovely thing to have lots of fresh greens through that time. So we do a dwarf green, Nero di Toscana, red curled, and there's other varieties which we pick later in the winter, but those would be the 3 that we'd be picking around them. And leeks, we're sowing, where did I write our leek varieties? Around the sort of 1st week in April, and we've got Husky, Avano, and Hannibal. And as far as like extending the season with the polytunnel, it's kind of that time of year where we don't actually need to extend much because we've got so much variety outdoors. The one thing we do have a lot of in the tunnels are salads, or at least salads starting ready for the winter. And I would say our autumn kind of salads are Australian yellow leaf, black seeded Simpson, Cocard, and Camellia. So I think that's it.
Cool. Thanks, Tom. Sorry to miss you out. There's a couple of questions in chat, which I think we'll come to at the end, if that's all right. It might fit in better. One from Mick and one from Vina, sorry. Becca, do you want to add your salad recommendations as well? And then also Harry.
like all the old favourites. I basically go into the Tamar catalogue and just pick one of everything and just grow it with it.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, that's a new one. Let's grow that.
Yeah, got to have some fun, haven't you?
Yeah.
Thank you. Harry, any favourites?
Well, yeah, all the salad brassicas, I guess. Oh, something we did at Barkham, we did, we put some forced, so we'd grow chicory for forcing and then force it. So you dig the roots at the end of the summer in the autumn and then you force them in put them in crates with soil and you get these lovely succulent sort of white forced, the chickens. But we used to put that in the salad in the winter and that was quite a nice thing. And all the chicories, because you can get them going, sort of sow them in. I think we sort of sow them, get them planted in July, and then that sees us through the winter at Shillingford. I think that's what, yeah, so they're quite good.
Cool. Brilliant. There was just a question in chat about the varieties that Tom was talking about. So we might come back to that at the end if that's all right, Tom. We'll just have them all written down for people. I know I recognise quite a few of the lettuces there, Black-seeded Simpson and Kokardi and others. Right, so talking about chicory and winter, if we come on to winter crops now, which is the kind of December to March-ish time. If we start again with you, Becca, sorry, hopped about a bit with the salad question there. Your thoughts on winter crops, so favourites in that time?
A lot of them have already been said.
Yeah.
Collies that kind of come sort of April-ish time are great if they work. It's always a bit of a gamble, depending on what spring's like as to what happens. Leeks are always great, and I normally sort of aim for the later varieties, so like Bandit and Atlanta and Giant Winter, and then sort of basically everyone gets onions, and then when the onions run out or are starting to run out, then I sort of add in leeks. And then I thought dried chilies is a good one to add to the mix. So we're lucky that we've got Uni on site, and they've got a big, huge oven, especially for drying plants and things. So we borrow that occasionally and fill it full of chilies. So I've got a big bucket full of dried chilies from a couple of years ago, and they just keep for ages, and they're a really good thing to add. But no, a lot of the members, I think, probably go like, oh no, more chilies, and they've probably got cupboards full of them. But I try and keep convincing them that if they just grind them up, then they've got chili flakes, and then it's more usable than a whole big dried chili. So I'm trying to win that battle because it's a win for us. And that variety that we tend to do for that is Ring of Fire. We've been aiming to do a kind of milder chilies in the summer.
Nice and hot. Great, thank you, Becca. Harry, your winter favourites and tips, please.
I think one of the sort of the best crops in that period at Shillingford is purple sprouting broccoli. We plant 6 different varieties, and we do that. The main planting is the beginning of July, and then those varieties are all chosen to sort of different times. We generally have a fairly steady supply from October to May, but the best months I think are sort of January, February, March, April for purple sprouting broccoli. And I think, because I've been trying to think of crops that sort of work on large scale and small scale, and I think purple sprouting works quite well because you get multiple picks from those plants, so you get a lot off of it, and it's it's high value, and our veg box customers would have it. They just absolutely love it. They want it every week as much as they can get. So I think it's very popular. Collies is another one in that period. Again, various varieties chosen to mature at different times. Another thing is Shillingford and at Barkham, where I used to work, another staple in that period was sort of chard and perpetual spinach. At Shillingford, it's Chloe that manages that crop, but I think we do one drilling in sort of mid-May and then one beginning of July outside, and then that sees us through the winter. And we're still picking the chard just about now, so it will see us for another few weeks. But through those months, January, February, March, it's very, very productive into April. So yeah, those crops, I think.
Cool, thank you, Tom. Obviously don't suffer too much from too many deer where you are, unlike me. They like a bit of chard and perpetual. Cool, let's go to Ruth. Have your winter crops, Ruth?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really grow that many onions for winter storage. I've usually run out of onions by sort of like October, November. So for the allium side of the boxes, I grow an awful lot of leeks, and I start lifting them in kind of October, November. And I've only really, well, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I lifted the last of them. So we just sort of selectively harvest them. We store them outside. So they're a staple every week. People get leeks in their veg boxes, plus main crop carrots. I mean, these are all obvious things, really. And then I try and think about the roots. So people will get potatoes, carrots, and leeks as their sort of 3 staple roots in the bag. And then I'll try and alternate with celeriac and beetroot, parsnips. So, you know, 4 or 5 other root crops that kind of vary. I grow a lot of squash. So sometimes in the winter we'll be giving like squash 2 weeks on, 1 week not. Some people say, oh no, too many squash. And I've only a month ago did I stop putting squash in the veg boxes because we ran out. And yeah, we managed to store them quite well, but I know we're talking about storage later. And then it's all the brassicas, as many different types of brassicas that you can grow within. I always find that I just don't have enough space in the rotation, physical space to grow as many brassicas as I could distribute. But yeah, lots of cut and come again. So cutting kale, usually I cut the outside of the leaves and then wait till I'm starting to get a rosette on the top, and then I'll cut the top, and then you get the side growth from. So yeah, getting quite a lot of cuts off one plant, and taking the head of large green cabbages or red cabbages even, and then letting them regrow again, so you've got something there in the spring. So there's taking lots and lots of green material off one planting. And yeah, the chard and the spinach beet, which I keep under low tunnels over the winter, so that keeps growing and keeps coming back again. So yeah, nothing kind of revolutionary, but just trying to get as much out of those plantings and keep, babying them over the winter. I think, I'm quite lucky because I've got a pretty mild climate here and warm sandy soil. So I appreciate that not everyone could do all that all through the winter. Yeah, and keep everything, all the brassicas are netted over the winter to keep pigeons off, because they do. They would like to have them too.
The first mention of the bloody pigeons, great. There was also a point in the chat as well about kalettes being good to pick the shoots off, selling the sprouting, which I think is definitely doable with kale as well, selling the kale sprouts as well. Great, can we go to Tom next?
So I'd be really interested to hear what the varieties of collies and purple sprouting people are growing. Maybe afterwards, if a list could go through, that'd be really good. And as far as if I was just to say 3 crops for that period to sort of add interest and variety, I'd say the purple sprouting broccoli. So purple sprouting PSB late, which we sort of have through March and April, and then Rioja we have February, March. Celeriac, again, we do the same thing, that actually, because we haven't got space in the hot box to sow everything at that time of year, that's one of the only things we buy in from Delftlands as well as celeriac. But that's great. That's a really nice thing to have through the winter. And then I would say the salads. So our salad crops that we're picking through that period, which we would be sowing on the 14th of September. Like, it was after reading an article by who was it? It was in the OGA magazine, but we read an article. It was very specific about the date. So we pretty much do all our salad sowing for winter around the 14th, so within a couple of days of that. And we do winter density, Cookard, Cerbiata, I don't know, Pancaleri, Little Leprechaun, Tusker, and Lolo Rossa. And we've basically, Lizzie, who's the other grower with me, she's kind of really refined the salads over the years. And actually those are the ones that are growing really well for us at the moment. And what else was there? No, I think that's it. Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Tom. As well, there was a couple of questions which might be worth just mentioning now rather than at the end. People asking about varieties. So if you get a chance at all, Tom, just to write the varieties of lettuces that you mentioned before in the chat, just for people to see for when we are recording this as well, so that will be shared. And also for Harry, your PSB varieties, there was a question there as well. So if you get a chance, just pop down your favourites there, that'd be great.
And Harry's collie varieties, if possible, as well, would be good.
Yeah, I think Dom's written his collies down in the chat. So, right, so shall we move on to storage quickly now and cycle back to Becca? So I think storage is quite a big issue, especially if it's something you haven't had to think about before and just literally plops out the door. So we're going to look at what do you grow for storing, which veg and varieties, when do you grow it, how do you store it, any problems with that, and yeah, just your experiences with storage.
Right then, so beetroot that is sown direct in about June sometime. Generally Detroit Globe, but also Cylindra are quite good. So then they go in sand, damp sand, like a giant lasagna layer of sand, little water, beetroot, sand, water, beetroot in ton sacks, preferably in somewhere where no rodents can get to. And celeriac is done the same, it's lifted and put in sand. The celeriac, I've already mentioned, sown on the 14th of February, monarch. I have been trying to do it from hills, but I found that it's easier just doing it from seed and cooking it. That's just me. Squash lives quite happily in a heated greenhouse for the winter because no creatures can get to it, and it's nice and dry in there, and the humidity levels are good. Whereas when we start growing plants and we need that greenhouse space, then they come into the veg collection room storage area, and that's a bit too damp, and so then they all start going a bit wrong, which I had to sort out yesterday. Garlic and onions, we lie them down in a polytunnel to dry out, and then we put them in sacks, and then they go into storage room. Potatoes, either in 25 kilo sacks or in crates, that seem to work quite well. Then there's dried beans, so borlotti beans, dwarf borlottis, harvested in about August, sown direct in about June, sorry. Quite a low maintenance crop really, it's quite good. Then just pull them out of the ground, the whole plant, in about October, just as the frosts are coming, and then put them in polytunnel for a few months, and then hit them with a stick in a sack to get the beans out, dry them a bit more, and they're excellent for the hungry gap. I've tried quinoa. The problem is the processing. When you're doing, you know, when you harvest 40 kilos of it, it's a bit more than 1 kilo. It's a difficult amount to try and process, so I haven't quite narrowed that down. So yeah, the problems I'd say are rodents, getting the humidity right or lack of humidity right, and then getting the temperature, keeping it frost-free, are quite important. Things like carrots are still quite happily out in the field from the soil. Sometimes a layer of straw over them. The black round Spanish radish stay outside quite happily. Yep, I think that's about it.
Cool. It's nice finding stuff that is happy to be stored outside, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thanks, Becca. Harry, can we come to you next about storage?
I think, yeah, the crop I've got most experience with storing is squash. At Barkham, the only crop we grew for storage was squash. So but yeah, the main thing with that is keeping the rodents, keeping the rats off of it. Definitely seen what can happen if the rats discover it, and then you don't even realize they've done it, and then you pick up a squash and there's a hole in the back of it and all the seeds have been taken. So you've got to keep at Barkham we used to turn one of the cold stores into a squash store because it was completely rat proof. So but at Shillingford the squash just get harvested straight off the field into big huge wooden sort of crates nestled in layers of straw, and then they get stacked in the barn. And I'm amazed, well, I think there's a couple of cats that live in there, so if you've got cats they'll help keep the rats off, and they store in there. Again, like everyone else has said, we've just sort of finished using them about 2 weeks ago, I guess, so really good storage. And then at Shillingford, the other things that we do, it's mainly Martin Bragg that grows all the sort of potatoes and carrots at Shillingford. Our team is not so much involved in that, but so he harvests them in the main harvest is in October, November, and then they're stored in big crates again, big wooden crates, and they generally last till February. Same with the onions. The onions we harvest in about August, and then they get cured in the polytunnels, and then they last until about February again. So we do buy in those months where we don't have them. So I think Martin Bragg, I think he's now built another cold store, and the idea with that is to put about 10 tons of potatoes in there in the winter. I mean, once they're harvested, and hopefully they should then store till about mid-March. That's the future plan. So there's, what else? Beetroot, I guess. This year, actually, we didn't have to, because there was no hard frost where we were, so we didn't actually have to get them in, so they just stored in the field. So that was really good, obviously. I think that's about it, really.
Great, thanks, Harry. There was also just a quick clarification as well for Becca about the black radish. I don't know if you saw that, Becca. You leave it in the ground rather than harvest it and then store it outside. Is that right?
Leave it where it's been growing, yeah.
Yeah, just take it as and when.
Yeah, we've experimented with covering it with straw and it doesn't seem to make any difference. So.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Thanks, guys.
No, I'm using an iPad that I've not used before, and I don't know how to type stuff. So I don't know how to type those varieties up at the moment. I'll try and do it at some point.
Well, you can just, do you want to just say it now then for the purple sprouting, if you know them?
Yeah, I'll do it quickly.
I think some people are on phones anyway, so.
Okay, all right. So where is it? Just look at my notes. Oh yeah, so yeah, the PSB varieties. There's one. They're mainly F1. So there's one non-F1, which is Rudolph, and that's quite a good one because it sort of crops for quite a long period. So that'd be quite good for sort of smaller scale. And then the other ones, in order of maturation, are Red Admiral that starts sort of mid-November, then Red Fire, and then Rioja, and then Mendocino, and then the last one is Claret from mid-April onwards.
Great.
Is that? Did you hear that? Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I got it, so I'm guessing everyone did. That's brilliant. Thank you. And I think Helen's typed them in the chat for us anyway, so that's great. Thanks, Helen. Brilliant. Right, Ruth, sorry, let's come to you and talk storage.
So I'm very lucky here in that I've got damp, sandy soil. So everything apart from squash I store in the field. So I grow I end up harvesting about 2.5 tons of squash, which I cure outside. So I'll cut them and then I'll try and leave them outside. I grow them through my pecs, and then I cut them, clear away all the hulm and just leave them on the MyPex for a month if I can. I think if there isn't a frost view, and then I bring them in, and we've got an insulated storage room, which also happens to be kind of a staff room as well. But it's the reason it's there is it's an insulated squash store. If anybody should turn up like a planner and say, "What's this room for?" I keep it just above frost level. and yeah, it's relatively rat proof. Occasionally you'll get rats digging through the floor, but you know, on the whole, it keeps the rats off. And so then outside, all the carrots, beetroot, celeriac, and all the other roots, if I think there's going to be a very hard frost to stop the tops cracking or crazing, then I'll cover with maybe 2 layers of mesh. And I also use something called Cozy Tex, which I know not everyone has come across, but it's a bit like mesh, but it's just, it keeps the temperature, it's about 5 degrees above, you know, above normal, rather than just normal mesh will just, you know, maybe 1 or 2 degrees. But I think even if you just use like a double layer of crop protection mesh, that will, you know, keep the worst of the frost off the tops. But then of course, when you cover a root crop with mesh, then you're basically creating a mole or a vole hotel, basically, because they're safe then from, you know, your farm cat, they're safe from raptors. So you have to kind of get in there now and then and just disrupt the vole holes. Otherwise you come, I'm sure you've all had this, where you've dug up a carrot that looks great on the top and then underneath it's just been munched out completely. So yeah, like I say, I'm very lucky that all the roots will store outside, you know, because the legend is you store roots in damp sand. Well, that's what I've got here, so I just store it out there, which obviously makes it very easy, and things generally keep quite fresh there. So yeah, I've only really just finished lifting the last of the main crop carrots from outside. They were starting to regrow. So yeah, I've just finished lifting them, and the new carrots are just starting. Next week we'll be able to lift carrots from the polytunnel. So yeah, year-round carrots.
Carrots.
Anything else? Yeah, in terms of storage squash, I find sort of like, so the butternuts, you want to get them out first because they don't keep so well, and then you've got things like chikikuri. Sometimes they store well, sometimes they don't. Crown Prince, you know, I've still got a few for the house which are still sound now, but you just keep checking them, turning them, because you get little spots on them which, you know, will then rot further. So you have to kind of baby them a bit, but they're so, you know, they're so good to have that sort of bit of golden sunshine to put in the veg boxes when everything else is a bit sort of muddy and, you know, muddy and cabbagey.
Yeah.
Say, you know, yeah. So I think it's definitely worth doing if you've got the storage. But you know, if you can't store them, then there's no point busting a gut to grow tons and tons if you've got nowhere to keep them.
Yeah. When did you put your early carrots in?
They went in the middle of January. So I just drill them with an earthway seeder in January, in between rows of salad. And now, you know, so then you have to be careful about not letting the salad overwhelm them. So now the salad has to be pulled out from between the rows. But yeah. They're this big now.
Nice.
And those are Amsterdam forcing, if anybody wants to know the variety.
Oh yeah, great. Thank you, Ruth.
Okay.
Lovely. Tom, can we come to you about storage?
Yeah, I'm just quickly writing down all those notes because the carrots in the tunnel is something that we haven't quite managed. We did them this year and they came really early and then they all just bolted when they were very small. So actually we'll sow them later this year and see how that goes. So yeah, again, we're similar that actually because of where we are, most stuff just stays in the field. Like last year we were still digging carrots, parsnips, beetroot right into June, and things held right till June. Whereas this year, everything's just bolted pretty much last week. We've pulled the last few things. So what we do store, we store potatoes, squash, onions. We're going to try the Bolotti beans this year, and in the past we have stored chilies as well. So our potatoes, varieties-wise, this year we're doing Gatsby, Cara, Foxton, and a few others, but those are the main ones we're trying. We found that the Gatsby, we've done that the last couple of years, and that stored really well for us. That's actually stored longer than anything else. We have a really simple sort of potato box with straw packed around it. The first year we did that, actually, they stored really well, and we were still eating them right through till the end of May, we were just sort of snapping the sprouts off and they were tasting a bit sweeter, but they were still really good. But this last year we had a poor potato crop, plus we had a new storage area and we had a rat problem. And I think the year before there were a lot of cats around where we stored our potatoes, and I think that had that was really beneficial. So I think, yeah, we're going to have to look at getting cats around our potato storage again. Squash, yeah, we just harvest before the last frost, bring them into the tunnel, put them on pallets raised up off the ground just to keep them away from rats and mice. And they generally sit there until Christmas. We'll be doing our last ones at Christmas. And we're going to do, actually, I saw a little post by Shillingford on their boxes. So we're going to build those boxes this year and store squash to try and keep them right through, actually, for the longer period as well. And also, we've spoken to Becca before. Lizzie, who I work with, spoken to Becca about the beans. So we're going to do the Belotti beans this year as well and dry them. Onions, we're doing Stuaron, Santero and Red Baron. And we're doing them all from sets. And again, we just harvest them, 12,000 onions, pile them in an area in the polytunnel. We put plastic underneath to keep the damp from rising up. And last winter we did that. And actually I didn't, they've lasted really well. And again, we ate them until we finished them in May. And they were still, as the months went by, I'd say April, sort of March, April, May, each week we picked through them, we'd get more and more waste ones. But actually it was worth it because it was such an easy way to store them. And the other thing we're going to do this year is just put a load of pallets underneath them as well, just to get a bit more airflow. But it seems such a simple way to store them. We'll do that again. And chilies was the other thing, which we grew chilies, a load of chilies, pretty much by accident, actually. They got mixed up. We thought they were sweet peppers. And we ended up with so many chilies one year that we borrowed a dehydrator and we'd dried thousands and thousands of them. And actually we haven't done it since because I've still got jars of chilies from 4 years ago. But that worked. That did work really well. So yeah, I'd say the main problems would be damp and weather, just storing stuff casually in the polytunnel. If the weather's bad, then things aren't going to last as long. And rats is definitely the main problem for us, yeah.
Yes, rats. With your spuds, Tom, are they just picked loose into massive clamp crates, or are they picked into sacks and then stored, or how do you...
With what was that, sorry?
With the potatoes.
Oh yeah, we pick them into boxes and then, yeah, just tip them straight into the store. There's a little video on Kaitan YouTube on our potato store. On the year it worked really well, we made a little film of it.
Cool. Great, thank you. Thanks, guys, that was great. So we've done late autumn, we've done winter, we've done storing things over winter. Now we're coming into the time we are in, which is Hungry Gap. So everybody is agog to know if you have anything now. If so, what have you got? When did it go in? How much are you buying in at this time of year for your box scheme? And any other tips? So if we go to Becca again, please, Becca.
Right, I've got loads at the moment. Well, it's going to get a bit harder next week. But so because of coronavirus, we've ended up doing fortnightly double shares, which, unbeknownst to knowing that Ruth doesn't too, but it's worked out quite useful. Although it is a bit nerve-wracking. So right now I've got Chinese cabbage in the tunnel, which is amazing, my nicest I've ever grown, sown on the 14th of February and then planted out probably a month or so later. And it's just how long will it last? Will it all bolt? So it's fantastic at the moment. The Pack Charlie was amazing. And so I'm really excited about that. So we've just finished the carrots. That's the last lot of loans going out this week. We finished the parsnips the week before. We have spring onions that were overwintered in the tunnels, and in another few weeks we'll have the other spring sown ones in the tunnels. We finished the leeks off last week. We've got purple sprouting right now. We sometimes have spring cauliflower, medallion and alsmere that work, sometimes they don't. We've got perpetual spinach and chard in the tunnels right now. We've got true spinach in the tunnels that were sown in February, 26th of February. There's still squash, there's still beetroot, there's still celeriac. We finished the garlic a couple of weeks ago. We finished the stir-fry greens. Now's the time we're kind of ripping everything out of the tunnels to plant tomatoes and stuff. So it's kind of a balancing act between giving people food and planting things for later in the year. We've still got parsley and salad from the tunnels. And then we've got lots of plants. So I'm doing herbs and edible flowers. And that seems to go down really well. People like little pots of plants. And then we've got, so with the borlotti beans, for anyone's interested, we normally do about 80 metres of direct sown beds worth. And we get between 20 and 40 kilos from that, which is enough to give everybody like a 100-gram bag, which is actually quite a lot of beans, and they're really delicious. Yeah, probably a bit there, isn't there?
Yeah, so you got loads then. Do you buy stuff in as well, Becca, or
No,
is it just your own?
Yeah.
Oh, more power to your elbow. Great. Harry, can we come to you for Hungry Gap chat?
So at the moment we've got peas in the polytunnels at the moment. They were drilled end of October, well, 1st of November, I think I drilled those. And to stop, because obviously rodents are a problem with those, we dig about a 6-inch trench for those peas to go into in the polytunnels, and then the rats or mice aren't a problem as they are germinating. And yeah, we just started cropping those last week. This week we've just picked about 40 kilos off of that first bed, and then we've got another sowing that went in at the beginning of January that will start cropping next week. So that will see us through the Hungry Gap. Carrots, there's a polytunnel of carrots that was drilled, I think, the end of October, again, early November. And that we're going to start cropping that for the boxes next week. Rhubarb is a really good one for the Hungry Gap. I think we've been cropping that the last couple of weeks. We're having, a bed of permanent bed of rhubarb is really good. What else? Salad, lots of salad. Claire, who does the salad at Shillingford, we started drilling it outside the beginning of April. It could have been earlier, and it's all under fleece, so all the salad brassicas. And again, we started cropping that this week for all the boxes. So that's obviously this time of year, they all grow very, very quickly and want to go to seed very quickly. But if you drill every sort of 10 days or so, you'll have a constant supply through the Hungry Gap again. I think that's it. One thing that Adrian, who owns Barkham, one thing that he did that was quite interesting for the Hungry Gap was sea kale. So he went to a beach near Barkham and dug some sea kale plants, and then had a permanent strip of it down one of the sort of, under the gutter in one of the glass houses. And then you force it at the beginning of the year. So you put bins over it and cover it with straw. And then it's a really weird sort of alien looking plant. You get these long, thin, white, purpley stems, and they come in the Hungry Gap time. So that's, something of interest. It's sort of quite an unusual crop, but it comes in the Hungry Gap time. I think that's about it, yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Harry. There's just a couple of questions about intriguing about your peas. So it's a 6-inch trench all around the rows, is that right? And so do the mice and voles fall in and can't get out, or?
No, sorry. Like a little moat. No. So we dig a trench to drill the seeds into. Okay. So we dig a 6-inch. We put them basically 6 inches down in the ground. Yeah. And then that stops the mice getting to the seeds before they germinate.
Or they don't jump down that far because it's too far for them, I guess. So. Yeah.
Oh, we cover it up again.
Okay. They just can't dig it out.
Am I not making sense?
No, it's been a long day. It's probably just me.
Sorry.
Great.
But just so basically just put the seeds 6 inches down in the soil and then cover them up.
Right, got you.
Then because they're that far down, the mice don't get to them. And they still germinate fine. So
Great, lovely, thank you. Ruth, can we come to you, and I'll try and be more sensible now.
Sure. No, well now, yeah. Now I have to be sensible and not mention that I was imagining mice in little ladders getting up and climbing up and down and out of the trench. Yeah, I've got peas harvesting this week as well, but I sow them in modules in January, and then I plant them out because I have a mouse problem, mice and voles, and you know all the rodents in the tunnel as well. So I get them up to 3 or 4 inches high in 9 packs, and then plant them in the tunnel that way. And I do the same with broad beans. So I've got broad beans flowering outside. I did grow broad beans in the tunnel one time, but they just got so enormous and then they lodged and it was just a nightmare for picking. So I don't bother with indoor broad beans anymore. So yeah, again, like Becca, I've got true spinach just harvested this week. And then all the overwintering chards and spinach beet just starting to try and flower now. So we've just taken the tops off the old stuff, and that will be going, that sort of fluffy top will be going in the bags this week. And because of the good weather we've had, the following veg box that we're going to be doing, we've already got spinach beet and chard that was sown back in late February, which will be ready to harvest. So there's not been a gap in the chard, and we grow some in the tunnel over the winter as well, which we can keep harvesting, and that's just finishing now as well. Yeah, coriander, we've done a couple of cuts of coriander from a February sowing already this spring. And kales, I grow a couple of beds of kales, transplant them in amongst the winter salads, and then as some winter salads are finishing going over, then the kales sort of come up and shade out the salads. So there's a lot of kind of multi-sowing goes on, something on top of something, or multi-planting rather. Yeah, spring onions, they should be ready next week, and early calabres as well. So I think within the next 3 weeks we'll have calabres ready, and I'm trying to think of the name of the variety, but I can't, sorry, on the spot. I should have written it down. But yeah, we do an early calabres, and that's outside under the Cozy Tech mesh, so it just brings it on a little bit. And yeah, I just noticed something about parsley. What I often do at the end of the autumn is transplant some of the parsley that's grown outside all through the summer. I'll transplant it into the tunnel and just cut it back and water it well, and that seems to pick up and carry on cropping through the winter. So it's a bit of a sort of lazy way of, rather than having to re-sow for winter planting, just transplant the old stuff. That seems to work for us anyway. Yeah, I think that's.
When do you sow your onions and early calabres?
They were in early February, yeah, and in the greenhouse first, and then they transplanted later.
Great.
Oh, beetroot will be, the tunnel beetroot will be ready in about 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Ruth.
No problem.
Tom, can we come to you about this lovely time of year and whether you're having to buy anything in or what you've got now?
Yeah, it's really inspiring actually to hear all of this, because there's so many possibilities that we don't think of, that actually it shouldn't really be a problem, the hungry gap. But this year we are definitely buying in. Like I said, a lot of stuff in the past has lasted right the way through till June, but everything seems to be going a month, 6 weeks earlier this year, going to seed. So we are buying in and sort of supplementing with our own stuff. So what we tend to do with buying in is we just buy in carrots, potatoes, onions, beetroot, like possibly just those 4 things as and when we needed them. And then anything that's going to cost a lot, like the greens or, anything we can supplement is high value stuff. So what we've got at the moment, we've got fresh garlic that we'll do like whole garlic. We've got a few beds of that in the tunnel, which I think was sown, I was trying to see when we sowed that, August, September last year. And then We've got mitsunas and mustards, which was sown in March, which are outdoors under fleece. They're actually just along, you know, filling in all the space around the pea and mange tout beds. So they're ready for cutting now. But yeah, like someone else said, they're probably going to bolt quite quickly if it stays this dry. Broad beans, we do broad beans in the tunnel, which we sowed last October, November. We have done in the past to pick in May, the end of May. This year they've gone in later, so they're probably not going to come till June. Rhubarb, we've got like a whole load of rhubarb, which won't be ready for cutting until next year, but that's something we're looking at for that period. We've got, generally we've got salads through this period, but they've pretty well all finished as of last week. Radish, so we do regular sowings of radish, sort of March, April. Pea shoots, so we're doing pea shoots in the tunnel as well to mix with the salads or with other greens, whatever we've got. Chard we overwintered, and that has pretty much come to an end now. We're going to get the last few pickings out of it this week. Courgette we sowed in March, and I think, you know, we should be cutting courgettes by the look of it before the end of May. And the baby carrots, we sowed them actually in the tunnel in August, September last year. And yeah, like I said, they hasn't really worked. We've ended up pulling them early because they're all starting to bolt. So we'll definitely sow them more like January, February next year. And I think, kohlrabi, beetroot, spring onions. That's the other things we've got in there. So kohlrabi, we're just trying that for the first time. But I imagine that will be ready till June. Beetroot, possibly the end of May, but more likely June. And spring onions, which we sowed in March, I think. Yeah, they probably won't be ready, possibly within May, but more likely in June as well. So, yeah, there's loads of stuff we could be doing next year. So, yeah, looking forward to next year already.
And the things like the radishes and the courgettes, is this all in the tunnel, or is any of that outside?
Yeah, that's all in the tunnel for now, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. You're making me feel very inadequate as to what I've got at the moment. If we now look at, we're running a couple of minutes behind, but hopefully we'll whiz through this last sort of set section about jobs that you're doing right now, or you recommend doing right now. And then after we've gone through that, then we'll have questions that we haven't addressed at the end. There's a few that we haven't quite fitted into the flow. So we're just going to look now at, are there seeds that need buying now? Maybe if so, where you might get them from, whether it's just Tamar or Tucker's or Seed Co-op or others. Any veg that will need adding into your plan that maybe, as Tom said, he's thinking, well, maybe not for now, but for next year I'm going to do all these other bits and bobs. And is there something that people often do, but actually you think you're going to wait, it doesn't need doing right now? Whether that's heresy or not, I don't know. But if we start with Becca, jobs for now, what have you got lined up, Becca?
So, just sown the squash and the courgettes. We just sown the kale. Got the what should we call it? January Kings and Savoys, going to sow them next week probably. So we've already done the sprouts and the red cabbage, the white cabbage, that's all done, and it should be going in hopefully later this week, but if it's going to be cold, maybe a bit, we'll see. It kind of depends on everyone's situation, doesn't it? Like if they were supplying to restaurants and then they're going to be supplying, going to be to box fee sort of setup, then I'd be more worried about the admin and membership and, you know, trying to sort of get customers, because that's a whole other thing to consider rather than just the growing side of things. Like I'm lucky in that I've got somebody who does the admin and somebody that looks after the members, and I just have to do the growing bit. But it's quite an important consideration for a lot of people, I'd imagine. Yeah, so it depends. Like I was talking to someone yesterday, Lucy, who might even be on this, who was you know, sort of suggesting that if you had been supplying restaurants, maybe you could supply the high quality greens and do sort of like a greens bag for people. So do like the chard and the kale and the spinach and things like that. Yeah, it depends what people want to do, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So what is it you're waiting now because of the cold before planting out?
Oh, I was just thinking about this red cabbage and sprouts.
Yeah, yeah.
They've been outside hardening off, so they should be okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, Becca. Harry, your 2 minutes, please, of things you're up to or you recommend.
I guess just a general thing. I think because I've been caught out so many times by sort of saying, oh, I don't need those seeds for another few months. I'll just get them later, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, that sowing date comes round, and you haven't got those seeds. So especially when it, like I was saying earlier, when you do get into the end of summer, early autumn, when the sowing dates are sort of more important. And if you haven't got the seed, it just can sort of, mess things up a bit. So generally, just, rather than waiting, just get all your seed orders in, do it now, and make sure you've got all those seeds that you need for all the sowings that are coming up, even if it seems like a long way off. It's better just to get it all done, so it's, something off your mind. And also, with the seed companies, everything being in a bit of disarray at the moment, you may as well just do it sooner rather than later. So I think that's what I'd say, just because I've been caught out so many times before. But yeah, I think that's it.
Great, thanks, Eric. Yeah, so keep an eye on the slots when they're open, and hopefully one will suit your timings. I think they seem to be open on Friday mornings at the moment. But anyway, great, thank you. Ruth, any tips or ideas for things you should be doing right now or in the next couple of weeks?
Helps if I unmute myself. So we've sown sweet corn variety early bird today. We do two sowings, one now and one in about 3 weeks' time. It's partly due to my own self-indulgence. I usually try and go on holiday the end of August, beginning of September. So I like to have lots of things that are really easy and quick to harvest. So at that time of year, there'll be all the tomatoes and everything coming out the tunnel. But if you can bung some sweet corn as well, people get very excited about that. So that's, yeah, I'm not saying that you should only grow sweet corn if you want to go on holiday, but it's just, something nice to have, because obviously the tomatoes have been coming and coming and coming, and people don't say, oh, I've had enough tomatoes, but just to have that, easy to harvest thing if you're leaving other people to do stuff for you. So yeah, I'm about to sow kale in the seedbed. So off the top of my head, I'd say 75% of the crops that I grow in modules. But yeah, some of the larger quantities of kales I sow in a seedbed outside, and the same with leeks. I noticed a question in the chat box just now, is it too late to sow leeks? And I'd say no, not at all. I mean, I direct seeded mine about 2 weeks ago. Of course, it depends on your soil type, but I'd say go for it. And some people do leeks in crates, don't they, in deep crates, and that might be a way of, then you could have them in a polytunnel and then they would grow faster if you're worried that you haven't got time to do that. Yeah, get your seeds now. I find, yeah, because otherwise I forget things. I think, oh, I can't be bothered to look up the variety of this or that, and I'll get it later. And unless you're very good at record keeping, and I'm not very good at record keeping, you kind of forget, and then you think, oh, it's time to sow fennel. It's like, I haven't got any fennel. So yeah, be good at record. Don't be me, be good at record keeping. I think maybe after 17 years I can wing it a bit now. I did used to keep very, very detailed records, which is fine. And then you realize it's almost like you can feel, oh, the sun's there in the sky, so therefore it must be time to sow this, that, or the other, which is, people always say don't panic after they've spent years and years panicking and now they look all cool. And it's like, yeah, if you knew me 15 years ago, I wouldn't seem really so laid back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as well as the celeriac that I get from Delftland, I also buy in all my headed cabbages, again, just to free up some propagation space. They'll be coming soon, but I mean, obviously you've still got time to sow those. And I think if you're growing for boxes, it's worth remembering that it's not like trying to grow for restaurants or wholesale where they say, oh, well, if your cabbage isn't, of this size, then it's not acceptable to us. for veg boxes, you can just give them 2 smaller cabbages. You know, it's no massive drama. They may actually prefer that because 1 cabbage is for Tuesday and 1 cabbage is for Friday. It's not, you know, so don't, I think, yeah, if you keep not endlessly communicating with your customers, but if you, you know, you just sort of mention that this has happened and it makes them feel involved and they think, oh yeah, this is like almost like getting veg from my garden. So I'll tolerate the odd bit of, you know, slightly funny shaped carrots and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
Perhaps
So,
we need another webinar on communicating to your veg box customers. Might be quite an interesting one.
Yeah, don't give them too much leeway though. You know, if you start letting them be too fussy, it's kind of like, I would say, so this is what we do. If you like it, have it. But you know, don't. You can end. There'll always be 3 or 4 people who are just endlessly saying, "Oh, we don't like this," or "Can you do that?" And it's like, no, it's like you're getting a really good deal. Just eat it.
The good thing about the pandemic, it's making people quite direct in terms of producers. As in like, well, that's tough. I've got 100 other people, so it's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Suddenly, it's a seller's market. Hey.
Yeah. Yay! That time. Brilliant. Thank you, Ruth. Tom, we come to you for jobs for now. If that's all right.
So yeah, going back to the seed planning thing, I'd say the same. That actually, you know, it's actually a really nice thing to do over winter, just when you've got time to just chill out and drink coffee and look at varieties, and just, you know, chat to other growers about what varieties work for them. And another thing that we've done this year, I think I've always sort of monopolized the seed buying because I kind of started things up, but this year we've split it between myself and Lizzie, who's the other grower. So actually we pretty much split all the crops in half, and we'll probably like vary it each year. So we won't stick with the same group of crops, but it just means that right from the outset, we've both got like ownership of what varieties we're choosing, and we can sort of share ideas about what we liked, what we didn't like. We've handed on some of the varieties to our volunteers and trainees as well. So they're kind of responsible for sowing dates and things like that. So kind of splitting up the responsibility in a way right from the start is quite a good thing. But I would say that we do order everything, and we have all our seeds kind of boxed up in our houses ready to go like in February. So like we don't, there's always things we forget or things we think, oh, we'll try that. So we buy things as we go through, but all our seed planning and buying is done sort of January, February. We're only halfway through like our sowing at the moment. And that's one of the things that I think I've become more laid back with is sowing dates and things going in late. I think, you know, generally a lot of stuff catches up. It doesn't really matter. There are critical crops that sort of you really need to hit the right date, but a lot of them, you know, they're really fine if they go in a month late, 2 months late sometimes. You know, last year we couldn't get on the land because it was so wet and cold, and we didn't put our onion crop in, I think, until the middle of June or something, whereas we would have got it in March, April before. And actually it was the best onion crop we've ever had. So, you know, you just don't know how things are going to go. What else was there? Veg. Yeah, no, there's no point in me going through. I could list what we're going to sow, but we've still got loads of stuff to sow. So I don't feel like it's not too late to do all sorts of stuff still now. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Yes, just confirmation that the meeting is being recorded. So if anyone's struggling with things cutting in and out, then all these pearls of wisdom will be available to be revisited time and time again in your own leisure time. So probably what we should do now is thank you everyone for keeping well to time. We're just running a couple of minutes over, but we've still got over 10 minutes for questions. So Helen, do you want to be in charge of sorting out those questions? I've got a few here that I've written down, but
yeah, I mean, some of them have been answered, but one is tips for growing butternut squash successfully. I'll do 2, shall I, and then do another 2 in a bit. And another one, which is, do any of you offer asparagus in your boxes?
Would anyone like to go? I think the squash was following on from you, Tom, actually, talking about butternut squash in particular. I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, well, we've grown butternut squash. We kind of grow a bit every year, but I've got to say it's one of the ones we don't grow much of because it does seem a lot less reliable than other varieties. I don't know whether it's the seed or the growing conditions. I'm not sure what, but I couldn't really tell you. We kind of don't risk. We don't put too much in. We grow some of it, but not a great deal because it doesn't perform as well as other ones. What was the other thing? There was something else. The other question?
It was about whether you put asparagus in your boxes.
We've tried asparagus, but we haven't got great soil for it. But it is something, now we've got 2 sites, and I think the new site has got a lot better soil. It is something that we'd like to try there. I think it's probably a really good early crop.
Great, thanks, Tom. Does anyone else want to come in with some thoughts on butternuts?
I would say grow as early variety as you possibly can, because I think it just needs a longer season. I think it was bred for, you know, warmer climes than ours. I have variable luck with it. I grow Hunter usually, but yeah, just get an early variety. And yeah, probably we only do about 10% of 10% of all our squash, if that, plants are butternut. But it's sort of that thing, almost like, particularly if you've got new customers, they, you know, you give them a Crown Prince and it's a bit of a panic because they don't know what it is. But if you start them off with a butternut, they know what that is, and then, you know, then you're introducing them to, you know, other types of squash, and then they get quite excited about what shape you're going to chuck at them next. But yeah, and also I find that it doesn't always store that well, so the skins are a bit thin, or if they get any damage, then they'll rot quickly. So grow some and then get them out pretty much. You know, they're one of the first squashes that go out. We don't grow asparagus. I'm often tempted, but it's that whole thing of getting a site free enough of perennial weeds, because obviously once you've got it planted, then you can't, you know, you can't dig out any perennial weeds really, and you know, it's coming up at the same time as all your perennial weeds are coming up. So I think if you can get a really good clean bed for it, then great. But yeah, it's quite a specialist crop, I would say.
Yeah.
Somebody's just asked, do you put your squashes in whole, or do you slice a certain weight for the boxes? So I just come back on that. Yeah, with the bigger ones, we do actually portion them up. I mean, there's a question, isn't there? Well, if you cut something, then are you doing food prep? Should you be having, like, you know, food hygiene certificates and everything? But we just cut them and put them straight into bags, and then they go straight into the veg boxes. But I guess, you know, if health came around, they'd say, you know, oh, you're not wearing hair nuts, or but yeah, because some of the squashes get massive, and if you just gave them that squash, that would be, oh well, that's your veg box, you know, in terms of monetary value, and people go, oh my god, it's too big. So yeah, and that's why we grow quite a lot of the smaller varieties, like Harlequins are good, and they store brilliantly. You know, obviously they're not the most amazing flavour, but they look beautiful, and it's a kind of try and grow things, not always, but you know, things that are about kilo in weight. It's just useful because they're manageable, but we do cut them. Yeah.
Cool, thanks Ruth. If anyone is interested in asparagus, I know of a grower called Hugh Collins at Kenson's Farm in Salisbury who does lots of asparagus and sells them also wholesale, so get in touch with him if you'd like any advice on asparagus. Becca or Harry, would you like to add any thoughts on asparagus or butternut squash, or have we covered it?
So we grow butternut squash. This year I've kind of really pared down the squash to just like 220 Crown Prince, and then about 70 of the Amoro, which are like an F1 Uchikikuri type thing, which grow as a bush, which are quite good because you can put them on the edge and they don't go into the grass. And then I'm growing some butternuts and some spaghetti. I saw a question in there about somebody saying, have you tried sweet dumpling? And I have, and it's very nice, and it keeps all whitish. But by about kind of March, it's got to go. And I have, like, when I was working at Abbey Home Farm, we had asparagus there, and I think that's put me off ever trying to do asparagus, because it does seem to spend once a month you're there reading it, and just never ending. So, but it's great, but yeah. Just seems like a bit of a thankless task.
Like many things. Thanks, Becca. Harry, did you have anything to add there, or on the butternuts, or?
I know at Shillingford we grow the butternuts. We grow through black plastic. All the other squash just go straight in the soil, but the butternuts we grow through black plastic, and I think that helps. I don't know. I guess I don't really know why it helps. Does it heat up the soil, or does it? I don't know, but it's Claire that manages that crop, and she specifically grows the butternut through the black plastic to improve the yield. So yeah,
they're definitely fussier, aren't they?
Yeah. Asparagus.
I grow all mine through Mypex. All of them, all 600 plants, all go through Mypex because I find it cures them better as well. So they're when you cut them. Sorry to interrupt, but when you've cut them, then you put them on top of the Mypex. They're not sitting on wet soil to cure. They're on, something drier and hotter.
Yeah. Cool. And any thoughts on asparagus, Harry, or is that an unknown continent?
Yeah, I don't know. We did try it, but it was a massive failure because of weed. What Ruth was talking about, the weeds just completely took over.
Yeah.
But I know Pete Dollymore, who I don't know if he still grows at Hankham, but he was. They had a permanent bed in their glass house that did really well. But that's all I know about asparagus. But it is good for the hungry gap, isn't it? So
yeah. Great, thank you. Helen, did you want to try maybe the questions of boxes and indoor space? Or
yeah, so I thought there was a sort of question around how many different veg boxes bags you offer with your box scheme. So I assume that's like different types of boxes and bags. And another question about direct sowing outside, whether you use seed drills, what type, or tips for that.
Cool. Would anyone like to start off with maybe the total number of boxes and then whether it's divided into small or large or that kind of thing?
On that. So we do currently about 70 half shares and about 23 full shares every, what would normally be a week, but is now currently fortnightly. And that's normally people bagging it themselves, so they weigh out their own vegetables, and we just bag the greens so that they don't go wilt. And then I use an earthway seeder for outside drilling, which works around.
Cool, thank you. Who's next? Tom, you've got a CSA as well. How many boxes did you did say, but I've forgotten.
We do 125 boxes, and we do a large share and a small share. So it's all the same. It's like the small share is just half of a big share. We don't actually weigh anything. We just kind of do everything by guesstimate. Well, we do to some degree, we weigh salads and whatnot, but just time-wise, it's easier just to do things by eye. And seeders, we use an earthway seeder for the parsnips. I think pretty much just the parsnips. And we've got a JP1 that we use for mostly everything else, just because it's more accurate and it seems to work better.
Cool, thank you. Ruth and then Harry, maybe any thoughts on box numbers and types, and then seeders as well?
I just do two sizes of box, a sort of standard size and then a large, but I don't offer a large at this time of year. It's more sort of later on in the summer when I've got large quantities of things. At the moment I just do one standard size. And I think I might have mentioned this at the beginning. So if I don't think that the amount that I'm putting in the bag or the box is enough to justify the price, then I'll just knock the price down. So what I do is I send my veg boxes out in bags, more controversy, and I just write the person's name and the amount on the bag, and then they just pay for that online, or they pay with cash. And yeah, most people will just say, well, I'm just going to pay the standard price because I think we get a massive, very good deal the rest of the year. So yeah, I just don't worry too much about, not having enough because people, yeah, just think, oh, this is very good value. Generally, I even have some customers saying that it's too cheap, so it probably is. And then the other question was, remind me.
About cedars.
Cedars. I use, I direct drill outside carrots, beetroot. Oh, nobody's mentioned agretti yet, but yeah, I grow lots of agretti. I even do agretti outside. So yeah, I use an earthway cedar for everything apart from parsnips, because I find that it sows them too thickly. So parsnips is something we actually sit and plant by hand. You know, it takes about a day, but yeah, quite nice on a warm early June day to do that. Can't be too windy.
Yeah. There's a question just about plates for parsnips and earthway. If I just ask Tom quickly, can you remember what plate you use for your parsnips? Or do you use the JP for that?
No, the parsnips, we use the earthway cedar. I was just writing back, actually. It's whichever seed plate is in it, because that's all I use it for.
Yeah.
I can't actually remember because it's down the field.
I don't think it comes with one with parsnips on it.
No, I don't. But what I found is the JP cedar, I just couldn't sow. The parsnips and beetroot, I really struggled to sow with it. They just keep jamming in it.
Yeah.
So I think actually beetroot would probably work well in the earthway cedar as well. But we found that the parsnips work really well in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
was just going to say.
Yeah, go on, Becca.
So I use the earthway for parsnips. I use the beaked disc, and then I cover all of the holes. So you've got the little holes, the little ovals. So you cover half of them.
Yeah.
You've just got the cut bit, and then I cover every other one. Cover the cut bit too.
Yeah.
And then that's the switch. So sellotape is your friend. Yes,
definitely, or masking tape. Or polytunnel tape I've used as well. I think I've used popcorn, the popcorn plate, which might be an expansion pack before. I don't do them anymore though, so. Thank you. Harry, types of boxes and total numbers, if you know them, and cedars as well.
I think at the moment, Shilling, they've gone right through the roof. So I think we were doing about 350, 400. They've gone up to, they went up to like 800, and they've dropped down to about 700 now. So it's all gone a bit crazy, really. But I think like the problem with that is like when you've got that many customers, you can't have such a sort of personal relationship with them. So because what I'm worried about at the moment, there's all these people that have signed up during the sort of coronavirus, and now obviously going into the hungry gap, so the boxes aren't going to be so interesting. And the problem is, you know, maybe a lot of people don't really know about the hungry gap, so I think it's really important for us to, you know, send information out to the new customers saying this is what's happening at the moment, we're going into the hungry gap, because otherwise, you know, we're not necessarily going to keep those customers. But it's hard when you've got, you know, that many boxes to do, and to have a, you know, a relationship with all your customers. So, but I think we do small, medium and large, and then various other sort of boxes. And then there's an online shop as well. But at Shillingford, there's two, it's all separate businesses. So the box scheme is separate to what we do. We just sell to the box scheme. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, cedars. Is that the other thing?
Yeah.
I think Shillingford we use an earthway cedar, and then I used a pterodonis cedar, which I really liked. But,
yeah, I've heard lots of good things about the more expensive ones, with the caveat being it's more expensive, but you know. Thanks guys. We had kind of come to the end of time, but I don't know, Helen, if we can squeeze in one more really quick question just as a bit of a roundup. I think there was a question about indoor space, how much indoor space, which I think Becca and Ruth have answered in the chat. I don't know, Harry, if you know offhand how much indoor space you've got at Shillingford undercover at the moment.
I don't know exactly. No, there's sort of multiple. There's probably sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sort of polytunnels that are sort of have 5 beds in each. They're about between 30 and 40 meters long beds. So yeah,
a lot, quite a lot.
Yeah, quite a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. And Tom, do you know roughly how much space you have?
Yeah, so we've got 4 tunnels. They're all about 25 meters by 8 meters, and that's just this year we put up the 4th one, and we think now we've got like just the right amount of space. You know, you can always have more polytunnel space, but we can survive pretty well now with that amount of space for 125 households.
Yeah, great.
I was just going to add one little thing to that. I've kind of forgotten that Coventry University have put up a big tunnel, and so they're growing tomatoes as a trial this year. So I'm like, oh, can we have those tomatoes? So then that means I've got extra space because I don't need to grow as many tomatoes, so I can grow some extra things as well. So it's quite
clever. Yeah, sorry, Helen, I kind of asked you a question and then just went and asked another one myself. Was there anything that we've missed that we need to round up with?
I think there's one last one, which I think is quite nice, is when you start out, how would you decide how many veg boxes are achievable on your area of land?
Okay, so I guess that might be any. I guess there isn't really, might not be an answer to that if you've not started the business yourself.
I can say how we started.
Yeah, go on, Tom.
I guess it's sort of more about, I know when we started, it was more about how we could generate an income, how many boxes we'd need to actually start generating an income. And so we kind of did it as a part-time thing, but also we didn't want to like be overwhelmed. So we went for 50 boxes, 50 households, and we didn't actually have enough land to provide all of that to grow all year round. So our first year, even our second year, we basically grew all the high value crops, and we bought in the potatoes, carrots, onions, beetroot, you know, all the things that take up space that you can buy very cheaply from a wholesaler. And then actually, as we got more confident in the second year, third year, we gradually started bringing in all the other crops. And, you know, now, so I think that's a kind of, and then you can also kind of gauge and work out how much land you're going to need, how productive your land is, how many people you need to work that bit of land. But kind of, I'd say not to overwhelm yourself when you're starting, and kind of gradually build it up. But yeah, focus on the high value crops so you can afford to do it.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I like the positivity there still. Would anyone else like to chip in with thoughts?
I would say that, so when I started at 5 acre, I think there were only about 50 to 60 shares a week, equivalent full shares. And so I kind of like did a big spreadsheet and sort of went, okay, so starting at the end and looking at what you put in a box every week. So looking throughout the whole season, what crops are available, how much of each crop you put in each box, depending on the size of the box. And then then you end up with how much of each crop you need. And then you figure out how much space each crop needs, and then you try and fit that on the field. It's kind of how I went about it, but you have to add 30% for things going wrong.
Yeah.
Useful. So yeah, that's kind of how I've done it.
Thanks, Becca. That reminds me of the, for those who don't know about it already, the horticultural cropping tool developed by Ben Raskin for the CSA network. If you just Google horticultural cropping tool, there's a link to it on their website, and it just gives you a good broad ballpark figure. You can put in low yield, medium yield, and high yield depending on how brave you're feeling. For certain crops, it will tell you how much land you need for X number of boxes for certain crops. So that's one to look up as well. Cool, thanks, Becca. Any thoughts, Ruth or Harry, as well, on matching boxes to land?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I think I just I think I winged it. I mean, this is quite some time ago when, you know, boxes weren't even a standard thing. So it was kind of even explaining, you know, I was having to market the concept of a box scheme as well in the area. It was at a time when I had small children in primary school. So that's probably the time you're starting your veg box scheme with having small children in primary school, because then you've got all the mothers at the school gate to sell your vegetables to. So you need to start 5 years ago having children then. Okay, that's how it worked for me. Just gradually built it up, really, kind of how many customers. So I think I probably started with about 20, and but yeah, it sounds like there's amazing resources now where people have done these numbers properly rather than just making it up as they go along. But you know, it's been successful. I've made a profit from the first year, so you know, I could undersell myself. It has actually worked, and now the model is fairly well established. So it's not like, oh, what's a veg box? It's like, whose veg box do you get? So I think a lot of this work has been done, which is great. Yeah.
Thanks, Ruth. Harry, I know this is a bit of a tricky one for you, because you haven't necessarily set up Shillingford yourself from scratch, but any thoughts on on matching land and boxes?
Yeah, not really, because I've only ever worked for well-established businesses. But I think what everyone said is really good advice. Thought what Tom said about in the beginning, just, you know, growing the high-value crops and buying in, you know, just being sensible with what you're going to grow the high-value stuff and buy in what you can. Don't try and do everything.
Yeah,
you know, because it's overwhelming. But yeah, I think that's all really good advice.
Great, thank you, Harry. Thank you, everybody, as well. I think we should probably wrap up now. We've run slightly over, but I didn't want to cut anyone off because there was lots of good stuff there. Just want to thank our 4 speakers a lot, Becca and Ruth and Harry and Tom, and also everybody who's attended. Thank you all for coming, and also thank you for sharing your tips as well as your questions in the chat. There's been some really good tips being shared in the chat, so I think we can save the chat separately and have that sent round as well. I think as Helen mentioned in the chat, because we've recorded it, the idea is that we can send this recording out to everyone who's been attended, as well as hosting it on our various websites, so OGA, CSA Network and the LWA. So there's going to be lots of chances to hear it again and listen to anything that you might have missed or couldn't quite remember. So yeah, just thank you, everybody, and thank you very much, Helen, for all the backroom working going on and all the techno action happening. And hopefully see you all again soon. I think the future of VegBox and retail is currently looking very promising, and I think we're all going to leave this with our heads buzzing and wanting to sow 20 different crops that we hadn't thought about growing. But yeah, thank you all, everybody, and see you at the next one. See you later. Take care. Happy growing. Bye.